Okay, here is the guidelines for the preliminary design review that I was hoping to go over with all of you in class on Wednesday, but I guess this is sort of the second best way of doing this. So let's look at each of these items here, beginning with the purpose. The purpose of the preliminary design review is to, in general, present the design approach that you have for the project. Your project has been defined. Now, how are you going to go about building it? What is the so-called design approach? The next thing that you will accomplish in this presentation and report is to convince the audience, that is, whoever is listening to your presentation or whoever reads your report, convince them of its feasibility within all the constraints you have, within the amount of time that you have to get it done, uh, uh, taking into consideration the level of effort that this is likely to take and the availability of materials to get it done. It's also to demonstrate, in our case, maybe this isn't this isn't part of a purpose if you were working in a company, an industry or something, but demonstrate that the project has appropriate complexity. In working in industry, this might be demonstrating that the project has appropriate viability to be produced at a profit and be sold in sufficient quantities to benefit the company. Okay, but for us, you have to meet that complexity requirement, and your peers in the organization will have an opportunity to look at what you're doing and make an assessment of that themselves. Okay, then we go on to the requirements. Here's what we're required to do for this. Presentations are going to be given using the PowerPoint template that's on the website, on the preliminary design review website that you saw previously. It's posted as a PowerPoint, so you can download it and put your presentation together. The outline of the presentation I will discuss on the next page, but for right now, every team should submit. And remember, in PDF format. I don't want it in document Word format. I don't want it in PowerPoint. I want it in PDF. The PDR report in memo format. Okay, so two things. This is the report. The report is the same format, that is the structure of it that you did last semester in 501. The paragraph headings will be different, and those are on the next page. And that's one thing that will be due. And at the same time, the PDR presentation will be due, and that will be a multiple slide presentation, and you'll have the same paragraph headings that you have in the PDR report as slides in your presentation. Okay, so next, all members of the team should have an active role in the presentation. So everybody should say something. The presentation, including questions, should not take more than 20 minutes. So you need to sort of scale your actual presentation at around 15 minutes. Don't make it too short. Make it too short, you're not going to be convincing people that you have something that's sufficiently complex. You need to explain all the details. There is really no penalty for going long. I'm not giving points or taking points away or anything. If it's too short or too long, it's just that I would work to not make it too short, but don't worry about making it a little longer. I guess maybe that's enough said about that. But anyway, also the PDR will be peer reviewed and a grade will be assigned. So I've already discussed the peer review process. I'll say maybe some more about that on Monday. Okay, so moving on to the paragraph headings. These are the paragraph headings for your report and the slide titles for your presentation. So all of these should appear in both. Only when you do the report, the project objectives and purpose should be It should be some prose. In other words, you should be writing a report and describing things, not giving a bulleted presentation. And then for your presentation, you take from that report and extract the concepts and put them on the slide in abbreviated form so that you can give an appropriate presentation to the group. So remember, I'm not looking for bulleted items under these paragraph headings for the report. That should be prose, where you use complete verbal descriptions of things as you did in your reports in the previous semester. All right, so the project objective and purpose provide a broad background and motivation for the project, the goals of the project, and objectives. So he's basically telling what are you going to do for this project. The outline and the approach. The project requirements and design restraints should be mentioned in the presentation, should be discussed in the report. The overall block diagram of the system should be provided in this section, and you should explain the function and the I/O interface between the various subsystems. Okay, so this kind of introduces the next section, which is implementation of the various systems and subsystems. So the first thing mentioned here is a detailed functional decomposition of your system. What I mean is, in section 2, you should have an overall block diagram. Within that, conceive of this as a big block, and in this block are smaller blocks, which make up subsystems that make up the system. Now, the next thing you do is show a functional decomposition, that is, show what's in those smaller blocks, if that's an appropriate thing to do. So, in other words, while in section 2 we look at the overall block diagram, in section 3 the functional decomposition is just a further breakdown of what your system, the components of your system, not schematics, not looking at schematics, not looking at engineering circuit diagrams here. This is an explanation of how all of this works. So just use that concept to make sure that it's all understandable. And for each block that you have, provide an approach for how you might realize that block. Okay, that's all that's really meant there. Specify how all elements of the functional schematics or block diagrams are interconnected. If you have some schematics, you're certainly free to show those, but this is not the stage of the game where you need to be showing completed engineering circuit diagrams or even functional schematics. This is the preliminary design. Okay, you may know something about some schematics, how they might look, but this is all preliminary. Show how all the block diagrams are interconnected. Discuss key technologies that will be required to implement blocks. What is the key technology? Is it a field programmable gate array? Is it some new sensor device that you'll be using? That sort of thing. And the next thing that you would either describe in your report or show in your presentation is the division of labor and responsibility. In other words, you kind of done this in the previous with your proposal. Give that division of responsibility. You should know more about it now. It's been a couple of weeks since you started this. So who's going to do what? Provide an organizational chart that indicates the responsibility of each team member, so the management can look at this organizational chart and see who is responsible for each part of this project. And then I want to schedule. The schedule is a detailed plan in the report of how the project will be completed through the end of the semester. And you should provide a schedule that shows project milestones using a Gantt chart. Now, at this stage of the game, you don't have to have a lot of components on this Gantt chart. You should have sufficiently appropriate number of major milestones that you're going to meet. Things will be broken down in finer detail when we get into the critical design review, But first of all, and most importantly, make the Gantt chart readable. Make it readable in the report, make it readable on the slides, and keep out the minute details of tasks that need to be accomplished. Look at the big picture here and provide a kind of an overview of who's doing what, when, and that's really number 4. And in number 5, you list the activities that need to be accomplished at a particular by a particular time, and just keep those activities at sort of a higher level. And then finally, provide a risk and contingency plan. And by that, I just simply mean identify the parts of this project that you think you might have the most difficulty with. What are the things that you're a little concerned about? Maybe it's someone else that you're counting on being involved, an external person or something to help out in some particular way. And what are you going to do if that person isn't there when they need to be there? That kind of thing. So if there's technology risk, highlight those. The company wants to know what are the issues that are likely to mess this thing up. That's kind of what it amounts to. So those are the main concerns for the guidelines for the preliminary design review report and for the presentation. And I'll kind of go over these a little bit more on Monday, but I hope you have an understanding of it. Now, if you have questions, please send me those questions and I'll share them with everybody else when I give the answer. So that's the guidelines for the preliminary design review.